Hello, I'm a little nervous, but I would like to thank all of TEDxEmory staff and all the students who are on my team, Eli, Pooja, and Jay. And I wouldn't have been able to do this without y'all's help and all of my friends and family here watching today. So, thank you. I want you to imagine that you're filling out a job application. You start by typing in your name and filling out questions such as your date of birth and address. But then you come across this question. Have you ever been convicted of a felony? Will someone's answer to this question change your perception of them? Would you be less willing to be their friend? Trust them? How does the stigma affect you? Other communities, other ethnicities? In our society, former inmates are stripped of fundamental parts of who they are: mother, caregiver, employee, and citizen, and are minimized to one: convicted felon. Your rights, such as the right to vote, are heavily impacted by your answer to this question. It is the scarlet letter that follows you for the rest of your life. Their perception in the eyes of everyday people like ourselves negatively changes. This is important to note because human perception is a vital key in how we interact with others. It defines your place and/or identity in the world. Here, I want to define different types of perception. Extrospection is the observation of your mind to your external environment. Introspection relates to how you perceive yourself, particularly your inner consciousness. This is important in defining your own identity in the world. Now, from this information, I want you to think, how does your vision of yourself differ from how the world sees you? My name is Taryn Salako, and I say all of this to lead up to the story of my mother and I. Before the moment I was born, my mother vowed to love and protect me for the rest of my life. She took a step to pursue a life of motherhood. And as we both discovered life together in a new life, the bond we created was so unique. Like Maya Angelou says, a mother's love liberates. Her love was simply embodied in me. Like many other immigrant mothers, my mother's love language is through food. I can remember times where my mother would spend hours, even days before a holiday, preparing dishes for our family. She wanted us to be happy, and through our love of food, she showed her love for us. And through this, I felt happy, free, and in other words, liberated. My mother loved the aspect of the holidays, where our family would come from all parts of the country to spend time with one another. Every Christmas, my mom would make a special Cameroonian dish called ekwang. It would take the whole day to make, grating the cocoa yams and wrapping it in its yam leaves. It was made using staple African spices such as Maggi and peppers, and not to mention, the bite of the red palm oil would leave a sweet but savory taste inside your mouth. As soon as the dish was ready, you could smell it all throughout the house. Everyone would gather inside the kitchen waiting in line for a bowl, and it would be gone in just less than a day because it was just that delicious. Until it all stopped. My whole world turned upside down when my mother was incarcerated. I never thought I would see the day where I would lose my mother. I was 15, and the worst thing about it is that I remember every event in vivid detail. My mother could not show her love for me the best way she knew how, through food. I could no longer smell the different aromas of ethnic dishes throughout the house. There were no more wholesome family gatherings to be had. The holidays felt incomplete with her gone. My mother and I lost the ability to be in each other's lives. It was like trying to hold on to sand, grasping at her, keeping our most cherishable moments alive. This moment greatly changed my family's lives, particularly the way we interacted with others. Often, people try to paint her in a bad light, but I only knew her as my loving mother. This caused her to see herself differently, altering her introspection. The pain and weight of that question, have you ever been convicted of a felony, is not shown in its simple yes or no answer. The problem with this is, at this very moment, the United States consists of less than 5% of the world's population, but yet 25% of its prisoners. The United States has the largest rate of incarceration in the world. To add more fire to the flame, my story is a lot more common than you think. As you could see, nearly half of the people in prisons are parents to minors, many of them who are mothers like mine. Specifically, 58% of women in state prisons are parents to minors. And that leads me to say that I'm most definitely not alone. 1 in 4 children, African American children by the age of 14, has or had a parent in prison. It is truly disheartening to put these statistics into perspective. Most of the time, a parent is separated from their child upon incarceration. If the parent isn't able to find care for the child is placed in the foster care system. I'm indebtedly thankful to all my family members for taking me in during this time. But there's a domino effect with this problem. A parent's own incarceration is often linked to their child's. By the age of 17, nearly one half of foster care youth has had an arrest or an overnight stay in a correctional facility, creating a cycle. Personally, I can't speak on everybody's experience because the emotional distress that a child endures from losing a parent is indescribable. Not to mention, the parents feel a magnitude of remorse towards their children for their situation. And through this experience, I have seen the effects of the criminal justice system firsthand. The rise of mass incarceration targets marginalized communities, specifically Black and brown communities. African Americans are incarcerated up to 5 times more than white people. People of color are given longer and harsher sentences than those who committed the same crime. This was all made legalized by the 1994 Crime Bill, which expanded funding for privatization of prisons and legal forces. There was a push for punishment on crime, instating policies like mandatory minimums, 3-strike laws, and sentencing to life without possibility of parole. In turn, this supported the rise of mass incarceration and police brutality. As you can see in this graph, it compares the people in state prisons who committed a violent offense to the total state prison population. Over the years, the percentage of people who committed a violent offense relatively stays the same, but the total state prison population drastically increases. Like Michelle Alexander, world-renowned civil rights activists like to call it the new Jim Crow, which signifies a new form of slavery for the Black community. The media supports the oppression of Black and brown individuals through their violent portrayal. News outlets tend to strip their identity, minimizing them to their headshot. However, white people are seen in a positive image in light of their crime. Often, their actions are blamed on their circumstances, humanizing them. For example, in this picture, it compares how a news outlet reports the same crime for a group of white men and a group of Black men. The group of Black men are shown in their mugshots, while the group of white men are shown in suits. The negative extrospection of people of color exemplifies this bias. This stigmatization minimizes its effects on the carrying on of mass incarceration and police brutality. Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Philando Castile, all were tragedies where their biased perceptions led to their death. Black lives do matter. For the longest, I did not know what was to come next when my mother was released. And it all leads back to that one question. Have you ever been convicted of a felony? Former inmates have to jump through loopholes to live a regular life, whether that be getting a job or renting an apartment. Despite their time served, they're still ostracized by their community. That scarlet letter marked my family's lives. In addition to this, they have to deal with the mental effects of re-entry into society. For the longest, I did not know how to approach my mother because I knew she was fighting a battle that I could not help with. And it was odd in a sense because after all that time being apart, and when I wanted to be most close to her, I knew she needed time alone. She was actively fighting a battle against a system that was working against her. And unfortunately, there are no government-funded organizations to support families with this issue. There's a need for nonprofit and service organizations in these communities. Along with my fellow students, Yassine Baha and Layla Daban, we've created a campus organization called Uplifting Marginalized Mothers and Individuals, also known as UMI. Coincidentally, UMI means mother in Arabic. Our goal is to serve mothers and families affected by negative circumstances such as incarceration and refugee sanctioning. Currently, I serve as Director of Incarceration on the executive board. With my story, this journey has been healing for me. Last semester, we had the opportunity of volunteering at a women's transitional facility. The residents had the opportunity to invite their family members and friends to the fall festival. Their children would come in their Halloween costumes wanting to spend a good time with their mothers. It was heartwarming to see because when my mother was away, I never got to have that. It was almost a part of myself that I could not get back. And it was satisfying to create a space where families could be reunited. And it reminded me of moments with my mother like Christmas. Through our collaborations with NAACP and SPEAR, in a matter of 2 weeks, we've raised nearly $1,000 to support incarcerated mothers and families. Half of those funds will be donated to Motherhood Beyond Bars, a nonprofit in Atlanta that serves incarcerated women and children in prisons. In the future, we'll be working with Heartbound Ministries, a nonprofit in Atlanta that serves incarcerated individuals, to create packages of hygiene items and food to distribute inside these facilities. Our efforts have not gone unnoticed, and we've gained recognition from our school's newspaper. And many others have answered the call to serve those affected by the criminal justice system. Even in the midst of a national labor shortage, it still takes formerly incarcerated individuals 6 months to find a job. This nearly mirrors unemployment rates during the Great Depression at 27%. To help mitigate this issue, a mutual colleague of mine, Jody Anderson, has created an onboarding and job training application called Resume. They have created an alternate approach to the talent recruitment process called the restorative record. This allows employers to look at a candidate's skills, positive experience, and community bonds to determine the qualification for the job. This redefines traditional HR roles that inadvertently discriminate against incarcerated individuals and addresses that stigma around that one question: have you ever been convicted of a felony? And I would like to applaud Jody and his team at Cornell for their efforts. Now, y'all, I want to be honest. As a college student, I do not have the answers to all these questions. Real reform and systematic change has to occur to break these cycles. But that doesn't mean these efforts should stop with me. I want you to listen to my story and be more inclined to take action. The first step to change is simply having an open mind and being educated on these issues. And I hope that the next time that you come across this question, have you ever been convicted of a felony, that you understand its implications. Everyone should have the right to influence their own perception in society. Thank you.